The TBM Avenger Air Tanker number 14 found its final home on Route 8 Highway across from the Central New Brunswick Woodsman's Museum, Boys Town, New Brunswick, Canada. Volunteers placed the Avenger plane on its cement pad just prior to Victoria Day weekend. Air Tanker number 14 will stand as a memorial to all the pilots who have lost their lives working in the forest aviation industry, and at the same time will stand as a tribute to the forest industry of today. Vernon Dunphy, museum board member and volunteer, talks to us about the history of the Avenger. What was the original purpose of the planes, and why were they given the name the Avenger?
The whole thing started in 1941 when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Now, of course, it did a lot of damage to Pearl Harbor, and obviously the Americans weren't too happy about that. So they decided to design a plane which would be capable of retaliating or to avenge for the attack of Pearl Harbor, in other words, and therefore the name Avenger.
What were some of the main features that the planes had that made them unique?
The Americans decided to build a plane capable of avenging the attack, and they wanted it to operate from an aircraft carrier. It was going to fly from an aircraft carrier. It had to have lots of power, of course, because of the short takeoff. Therefore, it had a very heavy engine. It's a four-cylinder engine capable of developing 2,000 horsepower. And it needed that power even though it was propelled from the aircraft by means of a catapult. Because it was to fly from an aircraft carrier, storage was a problem, of course, and therefore it was designed with wings that folded back against the side of the aircraft. At the time, they were operated hydraulically. The pilot would just push a button and wings would fold. Or push another one and they would go back out again. It was designed with 4 guns. The pilot operated 2 cannons, one on each wing. There was also a turret gunner. There was a gunner on the top of the aircraft. And then there was a gunner under the tail. And he was referred to as the Stinger gunner.
Which company built the Avenger?
First company to get involved in building the Avenger was the Grumman Aircraft Company. They built roughly 2,000 or 2,500. And after the war got underway, they found that Grumman was unable to keep up the pace. They couldn't produce them fast enough. So General Motors took a contract to build the Avenger as well. Matter of fact, they built more than Grumman. They turned out approximately 7,000. So we're talking in total approximately 10,000 aircraft built during the war.
After the use in the war, what other purposes did the plane serve?
When the war was over in 1945, then a lot of the old Avengers were used in the United States to spray cotton and other products. In other words, they were crop duster planes. Then, when the outbreak of spruce budworm took place in New Brunswick, the Brunswick government purchased a good number of TBMs and used them to spray the forests of New Brunswick to kill off the spruce budworm.
Where did this Avenger plane come from?
This plane that we have crashed. And if you want to know the location, if you were to draw a line maybe from Fredericton to Chipman to Boys Town, And back to Fredericton, where you have a triangle, our aircraft would have crashed in that triangle. We actually got our aircraft from Fredericton. It had already been taken from the woods. Actually, at the time, there were a number of people over in Fredericton who were building another airplane of the same type, and it was to be put into flying condition. And they were under contract from a museum in Halifax, and they had already brought what remained of the airplane to Fredericton, so we got it there. We built the plane over a 3-year period. Now, we also built a hangar to put it in that 3-year period.
How long did it take to reconstruct the plane?
What we attempted to build over first was a set of wings. Actually, the plane, when it was brought from the woods, was pretty much smashed to pieces. However, the wings were taken off in Fredericton to put onto another aircraft. So we had to look for a pair of wings. And we found a pair of wings down in the United States. They were shipped up here, and they too were in bad shape. One wing was missing about some 6 or 8 feet off the end of the wing. And the other wing, when it crashed, had struck a tree, and that large tree had gone back halfway through the center of the second wing. So it was a major project to put them back in shape. The first winter, we put one of the wings in what is now a museum building, but at the time it was our old fire brigade building. So we put one wing in there, and we spent the winter rebuilding that one wing. Major job. Because you had to take the skin off the old one and, bent metal and so on. So we ordered some aluminum, sheets of aluminum, stripped the old aluminum from the wing, straightened out the support members inside the wing, put them all back in again, and then put the skin back on. Now, it was a big job because the metal had to be shaped to the wing, of course, and it had to be riveted every inch. Now, we ordered 5,000 rivets to do the job, which turned out to be not enough. We had to order another 5,000. Now, this was to build the whole aircraft, not just that one wing, but the whole aircraft. So that took care of one winter pretty well to do that. Then we decided to build most of the aircraft. We wouldn't have room in that particular space. So we decided we'd better build a hangar, since we would need a hangar anyway to store the airplane in the winter. So during the summer, we built a hangar. That took the summer pretty well. After that, of course, we did our work in that hangar. Mr. Vaughan Ross provided us with a heater, so we had heat in the hangar and made it possible to work throughout the winter. We did the other wing in the hangar, of course, and then undertook to redo the fuselage, which was bad shape. But again, it was pretty much the same thing. You strip the whole thing down, try to straighten out the inner parts, and then put it back together again. Put new aluminum skin on the outside of it. So in all, it was, pretty much a 3-year job. Had to be all painted, of course, after, and primed and painted. It was a major job to put the propeller and the like of that on it, because we didn't know enough about it to do this sort of thing. So we quite often called on the gentlemen in Fredericton who were building an aircraft over there And they were all aircraft people and were in the aircraft during the war, or in the Air Force during the war, rather. And they were very helpful. We'd call them and they'd come over. As a matter of fact, we did have to call them and take them over and put the propeller on for us. After the airplanes were used to spray crops in the U.S., some of them at least, were brought up and used to spray for the spruce budworm. And after they sprayed for the spruce budworm for a good number of years, they then were used to fight fires. A large tank was placed under where the bombs would have been carried in the wartime, and then they were used to fight fires.
Were any of the planes ever lost and never found?
And a good number of them were lost for some time, but eventually I think they were all accounted for. And one gentleman in Fredericton had a list of all of the crash sites, and you could go to him and he could tell you where the sites were. Another interesting point about the old airplane was that 5 of them were flying through the Bermuda Triangle and just suddenly disappeared and were never found. The Avengers built by Grumman Aircraft were designated as TBF, and those built by General Motors were TBM. So our aircraft was actually built by General Motors because it is a TBM.
Come visit the Central New Brunswick Woodman's Museum and experience the Avenger plane for yourself.